We are software developers where we write custom code essentially for accounting firms for our clients. Automations, it's a way to get additional productivity that doesn't necessarily involve people directly.
What is the difference between what you do and what something like a Zapier or another software similar to that does?
If you do a really good job, your existing clients will become your greatest cheerleaders, and they will tell everybody else about that.
I couldn't agree more. I think communication is a skill that can take you a long way because it helps you bring people together.
We always find automation is important to say that it's there to augment staff. It's not there to replace staff.
Welcome to the podcast From Cold to Close. My name is Saeed and I'm the founder here at SRC Growth Partner, a growth company that works with professional services firms from around the world to help them increase their revenue and profitability by acquiring new clients. My guest today is Wesley Hartman, the founder of Automata Practice Development. Automata is a managed automation service provider who builds custom automations to alleviate pain points of the accountant. Prior to starting Automata, he was the director of technology at a 40-user public accounting firm for 15 years. While at this firm, he pioneered a robotic process automation (RPA) platform in 2014, starting with an automation that inputs K1 data from spreadsheets into tax software. Since then, he has expanded the platform to include data mining, custom emailing, invoicing, and decision-making solutions. Wesley, it's absolutely a pleasure to have you on the pod.
Hey, happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, I guess I always like to start every single podcast in a similar fashion, and it's usually for the viewers and listeners out there who don't know who you are. Can you share a little bit more about what you do at Automata and who you are as the CEO of the company?
Yeah, so what we do, like you mentioned in the intro, is we build automations for accounting firms. The accounting industry is notorious for having a lot of manual processes that the solution in the past has always been you just throw people at it, essentially, and make the problem go away. And then you just throw more people and more people. But in the US, tax law, accounting itself, is still straightforward. A lot of double entry bookkeeping, not to minimize it, but just, it's been around for a long time. The biggest thing was probably the spreadsheet being invented I think it was the late 70s, early 80s with VisiCalc. But tax in the US, right, is getting more and more complicated, right? More tax laws are passed, additional work is being created. So with that work, there's always ideas of like, hey, can we automate some of this work? Do we have to constantly throw people at it? And so what we do as a business is we are software developers where we write custom code essentially for accounting firms for our clients, where we will, for lack of a better word, get their data from point A to point Z, and then all the letters in between where there's additional steps that they want to happen, so that in the end, we just bring the human in the loop at certain points. But then when the automation can take it the rest of the way, we'll let the automation do the work. A little bit more about myself. Like you mentioned, I run a company, but I was with an accounting firm for 15 years before that. So as the head of technology, so I understand very well the problems that accounting firms face. Before that, my actual education is in computer engineering, where I specialized in autonomous vehicles. So the same stuff you see in like Waymos and Teslas that are doing self-driving is some of the same technology I worked on back in college, so long ago at this point. But in addition to that, I do speaking for the AICPA, which is the association. Actually, you know what? I don't actually remember what the full acronym. You know how it is. You get acronyms all the time, but then I know the CPA part is Certified Public Accountant, and the A is Association.
Let's go with Institute or something like that.
That's probably what it is, the American Institute for Certified Public Accountants. Wow, slightly embarrassed. I help them with a lot of stuff. But yeah, so I do speaking for the AICPA on emerging technology and automation. I also do like some state societies and professional groups and stuff like that, specific into the accounting space. So that's kind of the short and long version. I guess I'll just put a little topper on top of that I also write for the Journal of Accountancy every month. So a little bit of a lot of things, I guess.
No, it sounds like a jack of all trades in a lot of different areas. But what I really am looking forward to in this conversation is what you do on that day-to-day basis. It's that automation element of it. Because nowadays, with As technology has advanced, right, it feels like automations are becoming more mainstream, in the sense that people are understanding, oh, they have an idea of what automation should be, but most organizations aren't doing it, right? And most organizations, especially accounting firms, aren't optimizing their internal processes to the way where they can be as efficient as possible. And it reminds me of once upon a time when you had to file a tax return, you had to write everything in paper, hand it in paper, you had to put it in the post and everything. Now you can submit it online or whatever, right? The internet has brought that in. With automations, it feels like a lot of work, right? It feels like, oh, I have to figure out what the process is. I have to figure out what from A to Z is, how we would put that together. And then it feels like a lot of people will put that off. Tell me the value of implementing automations in an accounting firm or in any kind of business.
So in general, I always find automation, I mean, maybe I'm a little biased because I make automations, but with automations, it's a way to get additional productivity that doesn't necessarily involve people directly, or the people piece of it are focused on a different part of the process and not maybe the entire process, right? So, I mean, if we just look at human history in general, there is various forms of automation that have just happened over time, right? So I'm US based, so like one of the ones I always remember from history class is the cotton gin, right? Where they're able to process cotton much faster as opposed to processing by hand. What's that do? Okay, you increase productivity, increases cotton production, etc. You go into the Industrial Revolution where they started making looms, like giant machines that can then take that cotton into fabric. Right. So from there, it's like, okay, now you're able to process that and those materials faster. So automation has kind of been around all over the place for good or ill, like, because the reality is automation can be disruptive, and we know disruption is both a good and a bad thing. And it all depends on how the business treats it. Now, we always find, especially in the accounting space, we have found that automation, it does one of two things. One, we always find automation is important to say that it's there to augment staff. It's not there to replace staff. There sometimes is that initial, like, oh, am I getting replaced by a computer? And then I say, well, we are taking some aspects of your job that you probably didn't want to do anyways, especially when, I mean, the notorious tax season, right? Where accountants are working, they have minimum requirements of hours to work, like 60 hours, but frequently they're working 70 or more hours during those time periods. And it's not just accountants, it's the entire firm, right? From the partner all the way down to the receptionist. Like, everybody's important in the machine to get the work done. But what we do is we come in and we help automate steps in that process. Now, kind of to the question you were alluding to earlier about processes, it is extremely important to have standardized processes, right? So it's to produce like a consistent product, because automation frequently is very rules based. So for example, if you're still getting all your, let's say, tax documents via paper, very hard to automate. Someone has to sit there, slice open the envelope, flip through a bunch of stuff, maybe feed into a scanner or hand it to someone else to scan, versus if you're using some sort of portal system where the clients are uploading their documents. Now, in theory, a lot of companies are also sending documents out digitally, so they can just submit it digitally as well. Although in the accounting industry, also there is some notorious, there are clients who will then take that, print it out, and then physically bring it in only for the accountant to rescan it, right? And we're kind of adding those steps. But my point is that standardized processes in an accounting firm or any business in general is ripe for automation. And the best way to do it, I've found, is one of two ways. One, talk to everybody in your business, because you might know your job, your role as the CEO, and you have ideas and whatnot, but if you have a bunch of staff, they've come up with some of their own things to make their jobs easier. And maybe some of those steps can be automated, then you can give new roles to those people. A person that is trained in your business is not someone you want to lose. What you want to do, though, is you want to upscale them into a new role so that they can do more valuable work that has human value. And then the other aspect of kind of making it easy, honestly, is like, I know we're in the age of AI and all that other stuff, but talking to ChatGPT can really help, I think, coalesce your ideas because frequently I always tell people the blinking cursor on a document is sometimes the hardest thing to get past. ChatGPT can help you get past that pretty quick.
Okay. Wow, that's so interesting. And it makes me think, because 100%, especially in my own business, I can talk about it, is 100% the most important thing you want to be doing internally is leveraging time efficiently, right? And being able to optimize your time so that you're able to maximize the opportunities you have where there's human level of interaction that's required. And I can tell you, it's normal administration tasks and that type of stuff can really be frustrating to do when you know that you've got high level things to be dealing with, but also it can slow you down because the bandwidth it takes up within the brain for you to even go, okay, I have to deal with that, I've got these things to deal with, and it just takes up a lot of capacity that doesn't need to be there if you can lean on automations to go, okay, this gets done immediately. So talk to me about what are the most frustrating repetitive tasks you've witnessed in the accounting space that made you think there's a better way?
Oh, that's a long list, actually, because I've seen a lot. So a lot of my experience in helping firms has been focused on the tax side of things, right? And then, outside of that, there's audit side of accounting, and then there's the bookkeeping, like client advisory services side of accounting, right? So I'll speak on the tax focus. I've done some stuff in those other two spots, but we'll stay tax focused right now. So probably I'd say the few top issues are gathering source documents from clients and then getting engagement letters signed and getting them to sign their e-file form for taxes, essentially, right, for tax returns. So those are the three things that I find that are always the most difficult with accounting firms, right? Kind of going in that order, right? Like gathering documents, you're one relying on your client to give you the stuff and not wait till the last minute, because while they say, oh, well, the deadline's April 15th, for the accountant, they have hundreds of clients where the deadline is April 15th, right? So getting, your source documents and that sort of thing. So the accountant having to chase the client for the source documents. On top of that, the client might not have every source document available because maybe some of those documents don't get issued until later, et cetera, right? Getting engagement letters signed. Many accounting firms will get one signed and then they choose not to get new ones signed every year because, well, we're just doing work. And it depends, not a lawyer, talk to your lawyer, talk to your malpractice carrier and all that stuff. But for many firms that do want a new letter signed every year, chasing them can be sometimes an issue. And then getting the actual return signed, right? So that's the e-file, the 8879 that allows the firm to release the return to the government. And again, that one goes back to, well, the deadline's April 15th. So yeah, you finished my return in March, but I don't have to sign it yet. And then you send emails and requests and stuff like that. So those, like going on the tax perspective, those are kind of the three things that I see a lot of where those are the issues now. I don't know if your follow-up question is going to be, how did you solve those issues? And if I should just jump right into it or not.
Right in, because that's where my next question would have been.
So with what we do as a service, this is one of those, I think, unique things as far as my company is that, I'll be honest, we're not going to build a portal system. We're not going to build a contract signature system, and we're not going to build an e-signature for tax returns system, right? And the reason being is because that's not our role in automation. What we tell clients or prospects, if they come to us and they say, hey, we really want to automate stuff, and then we start a conversation, I find out, everything is, half their clients are paper-based. The other half are barely digital, right? They still move a lot of things physically. They use everything local, computers on site, no services, no cloud technology, anything like that. I've told prospects, like, I'm sorry, I can't help you because you're not ready to automate, essentially. You're not in the right place to automate. But then I'd still advise them because I think it's important to share my knowledge. So I'll advise them, what you need to do is you basically need to elevate your technology and move from the 90s style technology where you had servers in your back closet and stuff like that into more modern technology where a lot of things are cloud-based. Now, in the tax and accounting space, generally speaking, the tax software itself, where you're preparing the returns, a lot of them are still local server-based, so you can't get around that. But everything right around that ecosystem, because I'm sure you have 20 apps that you use to run your business, right?
Yeah.
I'm the same way. I got a whole bunch of apps. So we tell those prospects, okay, you got to get some apps to elevate your business, to be modern. And then we come in to help because what we like to say is find apps that will do 80% of what you're looking to do, right? 80% of the new things for digital delivery, digital gathering, digital signature, digital like online tracking of your projects and your tax returns. We will come in and we will cover the last 20%, where your frustration is, why can't my two systems talk to each other? Why can't this specific type of automatic email be sent? I'll use my own personal example. I use QuickBooks Online for my accounting. They don't have an auto email function for when the invoice date hits, right? So if I date an invoice for, let's say, tomorrow, I can't say, send this invoice tomorrow. So I got really annoyed by that. And, like as an engineer, if I get annoyed by something, I'm just going to go and find a way to fix it, essentially, right? So I wrote my own automation where every day it goes into QuickBooks, it pulls down all the invoices dated for today or the current day, and then it sends them. So today, no invoices go out. Tomorrow, because I have some invoices sitting there, it's going to grab those invoices and send them out. So again, QBO, I mean, they're a big player in the States, right? I think they have like definitely a majority of the market versus I know overseas, Xero and some other products are much more popular. But again, this comes in where like, okay, QBO does not do something I want it to do. So I'm going to make something that'll make it do what I want to do and cover that last 20%.
Love it. I think that's really interesting because that almost leans into what I was going to ask you next. And that is the biggest automation software that I know out there is Zapier, right? It's something out there that it helps you automate tasks from different applications and helps you get things automated in a different way. Yeah. What is the difference between what you do and what something like a Zapier or another software similar to that does?
Great. So I always like to say in automation, there's layers, right? So we start at the top layer, and the top layer is something that's built into your software, right?
Yeah.
So I give that QBO example, right? QBO, if it had a built-in auto emailer, I would just use that. There's no need to reinvent. We'll invent a lot of things, but we're not going to reinvent the wheel, essentially, right? So whether it's maybe, and like I mentioned, there's plenty of e-signature documents out there, and they have automatic reminders or other stuff, right? So that's top layer, where it's built into your platform. It's native. Zapier is kind of what we call middle level. So with Zapier, it's what we call like no code, low code, drag and drop automation. And what happened is all those different companies out there, from tax software to the entire Google suite and Microsoft suite and all that stuff, they create connectors within Zapier and publish them. And so that allows you to kind of build your own automations without knowing code, that sort of thing, right? And it's perfectly legit, I know. And there are actually other automation vendors similar to me who create Zapiers for accounting firms, right? So where we are is we, for lack of a better word, are one level deeper in that we are software developers. We build everything in Python. So like I look at screens of code and stuff like that, right? And so for us, we feel that there's like an additional layer of customization as well as speed and efficiency we can get, because by going that extra layer down to like the code level, we can create better connections, faster connections, things like that. So Zapier, the other thing I'll mention with Zapier is it's very non-developer friendly, so to speak, hence why the term low code, no code. You don't really need code. Now, you can actually use ChatGPT to do a lot of coding stuff. I use ChatGPT to help me code, right? That sort of thing. But those are kind of the three things, right? So native, and then Zapier. Other ones are like Make and N8N are kind of that, what we call low code, no code, drag and drop automation. And like I said, we're just one level deeper where we write code.
Amazing. And it makes a lot of sense because when you go a level deeper, it's ingrained in the organization, right? It becomes part of the organization. Whereas I guess within different platforms like Zapier or whatever, it can very much be a case of, okay, well, we kind of have an idea, but it's not integrated within the actual organization. So I think it's really interesting that your approach specifically. Talk to me about how... Oh, no, please jump in.
I was going to also mention one thing with Zapier is you can only use what Zapier has made available or what the company has
Yeah.
made available in Zapier, right?
I have learned the hard way as well. Not you can't always have what they. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Versus when we dive a little deeper, so we will look at, for example, we will look at Microsoft's API documentation to do the work that needs to be done. Again, that's that like additional layer of customization, or other systems, like there are specific softwares within the accounting space that, they have connectivity tools that developers can use that we use, but that's not published in Zapier and will probably never be published in Zapier, like just in general, because I know these companies. So it's never going to happen, right? So some of these things are behind walls where the only way to access them is through a layer like us, essentially.
Yeah. With actual engineers, coders who know exactly what they're doing, and it makes a lot of sense. I've been in those positions where I'm like, okay, I need a Zap here, but it's like there's no integration involved, and I'm just like, okay, I've got to just do this manually or have someone else do it, figure it out.
Throw people at the problem.
Exactly, throw people at the problem. So you mentioned ChatGPT a couple of times. I kind of really wanted to dig into your mind a bit on, I guess, AI in general within the automation landscape, and maybe leaning towards accounting firms because that's your area. And what opportunities do you currently see emerging?
That is interesting, right? So when I speak with the AI CPA, I frequently speak on emerging technology, including AI usage, right? That sort of thing. I'll come at it from two different perspectives. I'll come at it from the firm perspective. I'll even come at it from me being a CEO, startup, building business, and all that other stuff, and coding engineering perspective. So coming at it from the accountant's perspective, it will definitely have an effect on the industry. Scan and fill technology is probably the easiest thing, where you scan in a stack of documents, you say, hey, these are tax documents. I mean, there's more detail into the prompt and how it gets designed and all that stuff, but these are tax documents, and then automatically fill out tax software to prepare the return, right? So that's kind of some of the low-hanging fruit. There's some other stuff on the audit side where, hey, look for testing, or on the CAS side, look for outliers in the bookkeeping and accounting, stuff like that. But I think that, one, it's going to be a lot of startup companies that are going to become the vendors. Like, they're going to be vendors, and they'll build the businesses that can do some new technology, and I think it's good for the space. I don't think that an accounting firm necessarily, they'll get little wins. Like, I definitely am a big fan of everybody should have a license to ChatGPT or Copilot or some sort of generative AI, because it's still a very useful tool. But I don't think, at least not for a while, I'm not going to say it's not going to happen, because technology is moving very, very quickly. But an accountant that can take in a stack and just throw it into like a baseline LLM model and get a tax return out, it's probably not going to happen, not for a while. But again, I do think in the accounting space, there's a lot of opportunity for startup vendors in AI. Now, that's not what I do, because my thing is that I see in the space, there's a lot of automation opportunity, because what does everyone picture when they think an accountant? Like, you say an accountant, everyone has a picture in their head immediately. I won't go into detail.
Suit, glasses, and pen and pads.
A calculator machine on the desk and stuff like that, right? So I've found, at least in the accounting space, AI, yes, there's opportunity, but that's going to come from startups, and there is definitely a bit of an arms race in there. Essentially, as startups, I was just at the AI CPA conference a month ago, and there are probably like 7 AI startups for scan and fill technology. And then pretty much every company is putting in AI technology, whether or not people want it or not. Like, I'll be honest, I use a piece of software for managing my projects, and I turned off the AI functionality because it doesn't actually offer me any usage, and they're trying to charge me more money for it. Now I'm going to come at it from an engineering perspective, from building a business and all that other stuff. So I use AI to help me write. I use AI to help me build up some marketing ideas and all stuff. And I use AI to help me code. But there's a term floating around right now called vibe coding. And I'm fine with the term, but I think there is an importance to understand what you're coding and what you're building. And, I know we're an entrepreneur podcast right now, right? So there's definitely going to be some entrepreneurs who maybe are going to come out and say, hey, I want to build an app, right? That sort of thing. And that's perfectly fine. But be cautious about vibe coding, because the one thing with vibe coding is it doesn't scale. does not scale. So yeah, you might be able to build a prototype of something, but if you just then try to throw it into Amazon Web Services and try to market it, your app will probably fall apart pretty quick. And
Mhm.
maybe some people are like, oh, well, he's an engineer, he's biased, he doesn't want it. And yeah, okay, yes, I am an engineer. I've talked to other engineers, and yes, we use AI tools to help us code faster.
Mhm.
Absolutely. But we also know what we're reading. So I tell, accountants, it's the same thing. If I go tell an accountant, well, I just vibe prepared my tax return and the AI told me this is what I should owe on taxes. And if I go
Mhm.
to an accountant, they will tell me, okay, that's nice. Now give us your actual data and we'll properly prepare your return because it's going to be
Mhm.
wrong. And then the IRS is going to come and audit you and all that other stuff. So, again, coming from, a founder side, like I like the concept of vibe coding. You can make your proof of concept, make your ideas, put in all the features that you want and kind of how you think it should work. But in the end, you're going to want a technical person who is like, okay, now we're going to make sure that your data's secure, that you've implemented all the correct procedures, that
Mhm.
it scales because vibe coded apps, like it's just spaghetti code. I don't know if you've heard that term and stuff
Mhm.
like that,
Yes.
but it's like it's not optimized, right? So
Mhm.
I think there will be some addition of like some great entrepreneurs that are going to come out with their ideas and they now can at least put their ideas on paper and create design
Mhm.
docs. But at a certain point, you want someone else to build your car,
Yeah.
essentially, right?
Absolutely. I guess it's a great way to get that MVP, the minimal viable product, but
Mhm.
getting that to get something out there to go, okay, well, this is what the potential is, and then you can kind of work
Mhm.
with that and bring in actual engineers. And if you have to raise capital to, then you
Mhm.
can fund that with actual engineers. But I guess for entrepreneurs who have an idea, it's a great opportunity to be able to go, okay, let's put something together, pen and paper, something on
Mhm.
paper where we can move forward. I think that's a really interesting point you mentioned there.
Yeah.
In terms of then, this segment of the podcast we like to call the Entrepreneur's Room. And that's a series of questions we like to ask all of our guests to
Mhm.
give our viewers and listeners an opportunity to understand how business owners and business leaders operate in their business. So at this stage of the podcast, I always like to ask the question of how are you currently spending your days as a leader of the business?
Oh, that's always a fun question. Probably, I mean, it sounds silly, but it doesn't. So I'm going to start with the silly question, but then kind of bring it back to what the real question is. The silly answer is emails. I do a lot of emails, that sort of thing,
Yes.
and management, right? And maybe some people say, oh, well, you can use AI to automate your emails and stuff like that. And yeah, okay, maybe that, that can happen and there's apps I can do. But I think that really kind of brings back maybe the broader important point, I think, in being an entrepreneur, which is a communication capability, right?
Mhm.
I was talking to some engineers that were about to graduate from college in my local college, and they asked me somewhat of a similar question, but more along the lines of what skill set is like the best for the business owner, right? And these were computer science and mechanical engineers, but one of them was a communication major. And I actually looked at all of them and I said the communication capabilities are the most
Mhm.
important because if you have the best idea in the world that can
Mhm.
solve all these problems, great. But if you don't know how to communicate it, no one cares.
Yeah.
Right. So, like I said, I do a lot of emailing, definitely, but a lot of, and I do speaking and heck, we're on a podcast right now, right? So that's a communication piece. But as an entrepreneur, I feel like I spend a lot of my day just communicating, whether it's to my internal people that are building stuff, whether it's to my clients who are asking me questions, whether it's sales and marketing, right? Like building sales and marketing. Internal documentation. It's how much you want to internally document your own processes, and you have to be able to communicate that information, but take yourself out of it because right? There's how many times have we been, especially as business owners and entrepreneurs, you try to tell someone how to do something, and then you hit that wall of like, you know what, it's just faster, I'll do it myself. But the
Mhm.
problem is that that's because you need to be able to communicate that information to that person. So then you can delegate that role to them. And then as an entrepreneur, you can focus on other things.
I love it. I love it. I couldn't agree more. I think communication is a skill that can take you a long way because it helps you bring people together. And especially as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as a leader, having the ability to articulate what ideas you have in your mind and bring that in front of everyone and make it a lot more tangible is everything a business really needs to operate and function well because you're dealing with people. And at the end of the day, people need clarity and they need understanding and they need a lot of clear communication, as you said. So I think you're spot on there. As a leader, I'm sure you look at the business and you're always operating at a certain level. What are the most important metrics for you when running the business?
Probably the number one that everyone talks about, like profitability. Like that's the obvious
Yeah.
one, right? You want a profitable business. But to get there, right, I think understanding like what role of the business that you're trying to build, essentially, right?
Sure.
So for us, the important role of metrics is how many client, like if we're just going hard facts, right? Like how many clients we have in what we call maintenance mode because we have two different tiers, and then runtime usage for our clients because we charge based on runtime. So if we're just talking from a pure profitability perspective, like that is, our KPIs or something like that, right? Is what are the run times of our clients? And then I'd say probably the other metric, which is more internal, is just making sure my staff have work to do. That's work that's interesting and how they can make things more interesting, right? So like the one thing, if as an engineer, like anytime you write code, it should be better than something you did a year ago, right? And that shows growth. And what I always like to do is we can always just kind of copy and paste. And there are certain aspects where, okay, it's code. For our clients, if they want the same exact thing as someone else wants, we can do the easy way and just copy and paste. But the better way is, okay, look at that and now refactor what was originally done into something that is just a little bit better, a little more efficient, a little more streamlined, and then also then after you do that, find a way to apply it back to the original client, right? So that kind of everyone's getting some benefit out of it, that sort of thing. So I'd say those are kind of the two KPIs. One, the obvious profitability aspects, but I think it's really important to keep my staff. I mean, obviously not everything can be a crazy, cool, interesting project, but, kind of keep them engaged and whatnot, that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, I always find that really interesting to understand because profitability always is an important factor, but you have to be looking at other elements as well to help you drive the business success, right? So I always find the answer to that question really interesting to hear from entrepreneurs and business owners. How are you currently growing the business? What kind of business development, sales, and marketing activities are you currently doing to grow the organization?
Ooh, so our marketing initiatives. So in the space that we work in, right? So we work with accountants, right? There is, at least with the stuff that we do and kind of how we set up our systems and whatnot, there has to be a lot of trust involved, essentially, right? So for us, attendance to events, participating in like let's call them group forums and stuff like that, whether it's like networking events that are digital or technical events that are digital. I even do a little bit of social media. I admit I'm probably not great at it. I probably could do better, but I'm improving. I'm trying, right? But a lot of what I do in some ways is kind of old school where I go to professional events, I talk to people, I put a face in front of the company that they're talking to, right? So that has really helped. And then from there, just like in the accounting space, I found that if you do a good job, and I think this is in most business to business kind of sales, if you do a really good job, your existing clients will become your greatest cheerleaders and they will tell everybody else about that. So like I'll use an example. One of our clients went to a group show, right? No, professional show for accountants. And that client, right, there was at one point where the room broke out into small tables and we're just having discussions and talking and stuff like that, right? And so when the topic came around, like, oh, how you handle this, and they're kind of sharing war stories and stuff like that. But our one client, the answer that she just kept giving was like, oh, well, we just have Wes handling that. Oh, we just have Wes handling that. And then it just turned into like there were a couple people at the table who were like, I got to talk to this Wes. Who is this Wes guy that, I mean, they knew it's a developer that works in the accounting space and all that, but they're just like, okay, we got to talk to this Wes guy because the answer was we just have Wes handling it, that sort of thing. So, and we talked to that, that prospect and all that stuff. And we're kind of in the final phases of like, the process to turn them into a client. They're not a client yet, but nonetheless, what it does is that when they walk into the door to talk to us, they're already kind of primed because your existing client has hyped you up, essentially, right? So that's existing clients is definitely also a beneficial part of marketing.
Absolutely, and we found that it's pretty common, especially in the space B2B professional services, growth through word of mouth and referrals is typical, primarily because, as you said, it generates that trust factor. And we always say with everyone that we work with, when creating a conversation or having a successful sales conversation, you have to solve for two key aspects: trust and relationships, right? Mm-hmm. Especially in professional services. Yeah. And so when you get a referral, that trust factor is just knocked right out of the park. So then it's, okay, what's the relationship like? Can you trust that person to, do you have the relationship to be able to go, okay, well, I can work with this person, and you move forward from there. So I think it's really interesting you mentioned that. But
yeah, and then with that, well, I was just going to say, and to that point, and I'm just going to reinforce again, I mean, you're reinforcing me, I'm reinforcing you. We're in a feedback loop right now, but absolutely, I can throw up billboards and banner ads and do all sorts of things. And don't get me wrong, they can generate leads and all that other stuff, right? But in the professional services industry, right, it's people talk to each other, right? Like, yes, like our clients, our accountants, are they in competition with each other? Technically, yes. Right, like they're accounting firms, they are competing for business. However, especially in the accounting space, there is so much business going around that firms are opening up shop. Like I'm seeing a number of, there's large firms, there's mid-sized firms, and then there's a lot of startup firms that are happening right now that are niching into specific industries, right? So one of my clients, they specialize in tax for attorneys and law firms, right? So what happens then is at that point, when that relationship and trust is created, right, that law firm is going to go tell other law firms like, hey, we have this great accountant and CPA and that's doing all of our tax work and bookkeeping and all that stuff. You should use them, right? And so you get that organic growth because not only does your client trust you, right, but you're creating trust within that industry of you, right? So, and then you start earning a reputation.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Wesley, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today. I like to end every single podcast with the same question, right? And it is, if you had a magic wand you could wave to solve one business problem, what would that be?
My business. What is my magic wand that will the thing that will solve all my problems? Oh, wow. Here's what I'll say is the magic wand, but in some ways I'm kind of working on solving it right now, right? So you know how the theme is communication, trust, and all that stuff. So it sounds really silly, but I'm implementing a CRM. Like I was using kind of a pseudo CRM with some spreadsheets and stuff like that. And it was fine at the beginning when I was first starting out, right? I mean, I'm completely bootstrapped. So I'm like, okay, I need something inexpensive right now because I'm building a business, right? I don't really want to take investors. I'm trying to keep it independent, that sort of thing. But what happened is, my pain point now, you ask me, if we talk again in a year, I'll probably have a new pain point that I'm working on solving with the magic wand. But recently, my most recent pain point was I was losing track of communications and my relationships, which eventually could or start eroding trust. So in the end, instead of trying to continue with my spreadsheet and automate maybe, because I'm a programmer, I can solve problems. In the end, I realized oh wait, I can just go buy this product, spend less money. It can integrate with some different platforms. So there's automation, right, involved. It consolidates all my communication together. I already feel like I found some old leads that I realized I never followed up with. So that was my fault. But I'm like, oh, I didn't actually talk to those people and it's been 2 months. Like, why didn't I? Right. So the problem was, again, if you asked me a month ago, I know we talked a little bit before, but my problem was I feel like I'm losing handle of my communication and my relationships. So what did I do? I waved the magic wand and I solved the problem by buying a product. But again, kind of some of the conversations I mentioned earlier, it only did about 85% of what I wanted. So I then wrote code to automate the additional 15%, right? So I waved the wand. I solved a majority of the problem. For now, there's some learning curve. I'm still learning. I'm an engineer, not a marketing and sales person, but I'm, learning lots. But then I continued to wave the magic wand and got the extra 15% of what I wanted. So now my sales pipeline and ability to communicate with prospects and clients is significantly better, essentially, right? But we should talk, ask me that question again in a year and maybe I'll have that problem. I won't have solved it at that moment.
100%. So, well, out of interest, what CRM did you end up going with?
I ended up going with Pipedrive for a couple.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll not to hype up Pipedrive or anything, but there was two specific features, and I don't know. And I researched a few, but one
Sure.
is I use Fireflies for a lot of my recordings because
Hmm.
transcription and being able to search that information, all that stuff, and they integrate directly with Fireflies. And they'll bring in the summaries and stuff like that. So I'm like, great, because that means my team can see those Fireflies meetings when I have calls with clients, etc. So that was one feature. And then the other feature, which is probably a lot more common, which is it just integrates really well with my email box where I have a reminder every Saturday morning to log in to my email box, sort it by the last week of who I talked to, and then add those people to the CRM. Because not only have I used software to solve a chunk of the problem, but going way further back into our podcast, so we're doing a callback right now about having your own procedures in place. I have a
Yeah.
procedure now where every Saturday I go through my emails and I quickly add anybody I talk to that I have that was new that I need to track and all that other stuff. So
Hmm.
it's standard operating procedures, apply technology, then you can throw automation on top of that.
Fantastic. Well, Wesley, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. You've shared some really great insights. Loved having the chat with you. For all those out there that might want to reach out to you and speak, where will they go? Where can they find you?
So probably the easiest thing is to just search my name on LinkedIn. I don't post there a lot, but I do post. If you message me, I do respond to LinkedIn messages and stuff like that. There's the standard website, automatapracdev.com. My Calendly is there. We can always chat about stuff. And then, my email's there too. But, you can follow me on the socials. Well, okay, I don't say socials plural. You can follow me on LinkedIn. I have a Twitter account, but I don't use it.
No worries. We'll put everything in the description anyway, so that
Yeah.
anyone who wants to find you can find you. Again, thank you very much for today, and yeah, keep well.
This is awesome. Thank you so much.